everyone. Today I have Stepan joining us, and he's going to be helping me walk through some ideas on getting started with Visual Studio Code. For a lot of people who are exploring the external tools and more advanced development experience for modeling, one really useful tool to a degree is Visual Studio Code, which allows you to have a lot of extensions and ways to do model edits and a lot of interactions with the development experience in Power BI. But there is also an open source library of connectors or plugins for Visual Studio. So we thought we'd walk you through some great examples of some get started plugins that will really help you enhance your development experience and give you some additional tools for your toolbox. And Stepan, I know you have a great short list of those as well that we can look at. So I'd love for you to give a brief introduction on yourself, and then we can hop into Visual Studio Code to take a look at those.
Of course, thank you so much, Ray, to having me here. As was mentioned, my name is Štěpán Rešl, and I'm super happy to be there. And I think we can already jump directly into the VS Code, and
Please.
we can start talk about it. Cool. So right now we are inside the Visual Studio Code, and as was mentioned, this tool is pretty handy and it can be extendable by many different extensions. Installing them is insanely easy because you can just go here for the extensions and you will be able to directly find out all extensions that you will possibly have installed. If you've just installed Visual Studio Code, this will be completely blank. So let's find some very worthy extension that we can directly use. First one that I would definitely recommend is Power Query extension. If I will try to find it out, you can see that I have here two Power Query extension that I can install. One is the Power Query SDK, and second one is support for M language. So if you would like to be creating our custom connectors for Power BI, we will definitely need the SDK. But to be able to actually write the M code, the M language support is definitely the must-have. And from my honest opinion, this extension for M language is one of the top extension that you can have inside the VS Code if you like a Power Query and definitely writing that code.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, any IntelliSense or things that help you autocomplete and write the code out, just like IntelliSense and DAX, is super useful for being able to write and edit the code. If you're accessing any of the source code, especially if you're using Timdul and doing any kind of work with a Power BI project file, then you can make edits with that in Visual Studio Code using the M language syntax.
Yeah, exactly. And this plugin also have one little thing that make it much more better, and it's a formatting. Because we know that inside the Power Query in Power BI desktop, we are not able to have it any formatted, or at least not automatic. Here, it's very easy. Let me just start to write some quick code, but still, we're in a plain text. So I will change that to a Power Query. So now we're starting our script. I will quickly go for a table, and as you can see, because I also have another extension that is actually called GitHub Copilot, it's trying to provide me some handy codes that I can possibly use. So okay, let's use that. I will call it like a TBL. I will return that. And I can even go for a format document to make it a little bit more prettier. Now it was very easy because it was just one line of code. But if I would add another one or something more complex, like a type, it will be the name, which would be a text, then salary, which would be a number, and I am able to post them here, so it will be it will be a B. Oh, still it's a single. Okay. Let's
And it probably would need like 2 or 3 applied steps potentially.
Sometimes it can even work in just something simple like this, but it would need something a little bit more complicated, like list generate or list transform inside of that. So let's just use a quick select. So table select rows where salary is larger than a 3. And in a formatting, it will at least create a spaces between that. If it would be very long line, it can even wrap the lines and create it much more readable and much more pretty. So definitely that's an extension that I'm recommending.
Excellent. Yeah, I 100% agree. That's probably one of the first and foremost ones that is really useful. And the best thing about Power Query versus DAX is DAX needs the model context in terms of the columns, the rows, and everything else when writing it. So it is possible to write DAX in Visual Studio Code, but it can be a little bit more challenging because you don't get the IntelliSense that shows you the fields. Power Query doesn't really need that as much. I mean, there is sometimes the context of the other queries that you might need to be able to reference those, but it is a little bit more self-contained in writing a M-code query than it is in writing DAX, which does not require as much context for the rest of the model.
Yeah, in 90% when I'm creating custom functions for Power Query, I'm not creating it in a Power Query editor inside a Power BI. I'm creating it here because, exactly as you said, I don't need that much context. I just need to create the logic for my data.
Exactly.
Yeah, but still, if I would like to test something, I can still go for Power Query SDK because it's designed to creating the custom connectors, and it can help me to set up everything very quickly because, hey, let's create Power Query SDK, create a project extension. Let's call it like my awesome connector. I will drop it into the documents and it will create everything that I need into the beginning. So my initial Power Query code, where I can set up if it would use a key, password authentication, Windows, or anonymous, or I can just directly go for AAD to set it that, okay, it will create Azure Active Directory authentication for my connector. And then I have here the project and a query, testable query itself, and some initial images that I can replace anytime. So it's very handy. And also it comes up with some special additions, like to set the credentials, run a query. So you can even really test that here, which is awesome from my perspective.
Yeah, really great if you're ever needing to connect to an API and building your own connector off of it if it doesn't already exist in Power BI.
Yes. But I think we should go for some another extensions that can be for us. Now we know that there are some extensions for Power Query. What about the DAX? Yeah, even for that, there are extensions. The one that I prefer is this one, DAX for Power BI. This extension is updated quite often. You can see that the last update was on the 30th of July. And how it works, if I would go and I would like to start using my DAX, I will just switch from a plain text to a DAX. I can drop here any measure that I would like, or I can start typing, and IntelliSense will be here, and it will be creating the functions for me, and even sometimes the hints what I should be using, or I mean, like, hey, you're in a summix, so now you need a table, then the expression. But unfortunately, this extension doesn't have built-in formatter. So still, I would recommend you to format your DAX code on a DAX formatter.
Absolutely. Yep. One of many places we can edit DAX, whether or not it's here, either in Tabular Editor 3,
Yeah,
which also has the formatted code, or DAX Studio, but it gives you options depending on, especially if you're working with a PBIP file again and dealing with any kind of terminal language, and you just want to be able to manage all of your code. Having the DAX formatter is very useful for that.
yeah, exactly. But to now, we've just talked about our languages that we use fairly commonly. What about if we need to look inside our data and find out what is actually stored inside of them? Sometimes you would need the XML files. And yeah, the Visual Studio Code has itself support for the XMLs. But unfortunately, in that case, it doesn't provide you much support, like formatting or some ranges. For that case, it's much better go to the extensions again, find the XML, and here you can find the full XML support from the Red Hat. And if when I'm saying a full support, I really mean that, because in that case, there are many features, even a note system showing, and it can help you to find out what you're searching very quickly. On the other hand, if you don't like using XMLs, you still grab XML to JSON converter and directly convert your XML files to JSON. Believe me, this helped me a lot of times. But when we are talking about the XML, and especially these days, because of support of new card visual, and I'm talking about the support for the SVGs, we should not forget about them. Because where to start creating the SVGs? Lots of people would prefer open some kind of software for that, like Inkscape. On the other hand, you don't have full control of the elements that are actually used inside of that. So for that purposes, I'm preferring still staying in the Visual Studio Code, sorry for that, but going for extension called SVG. Because directly after you install that, you can start using that. And it's easier than you would thought, because I will start with a root element. And from the root element, I can directly show a preview, and it will create a preview of SVG that you are creating. So in real time, you can see what you've built, how it looks like, and if you're already using GitHub Copilot with that, the cooperation is incredible. So this can be handy also.
And especially now with a lot of the SVG, the new hit view box options that have been extended inside of the tables, it's even more relevant to start building the spark lines and other stuff that are available today.
Yes.
So,
So now we know that there's support for Power Query, for DAX, better support for the XML, for the converter from XML to JSON. We know that there's some support for SVGs, but also we have here some other support for the Azure resources. If I would just type the Azure, you can find out that there are lots of Azure tools that you can actually directly use. One of them is Azure Account, and for 90% of these other tools, you would need this one, because this one will provide the connection between your Visual Studio Code and your Active Directory. So thanks to that, you will be able to sign in. And then it's just up to you which type of resource or the workload you will need. For me, I'm installing most of the time the Azure storage, because I prefer having everything in one app and not going from the Visual Studio Code to Azure. Storage Explorer when I can do 90% of work that I need to do directly from here.
Agreed.
Next to this, we have here another Power BI community projects, like a Power BI VS Code. This is extremely handy extension for anyone in Power BI admin role, because if you install that and logged into your account, you can directly see your workspaces and you can start doing lots of very frequent API calls, like the rebind of a report between your data set, cloning, take over the data set, changing the parameters, and much more. So definitely try this extension.
I enjoyed it a lot and how much it helps you manage your workspace, and you're able to see all the artifacts in the tenant at any level. You can even, as you've seen, do clones, rebinds, deployments, builds. So it's a really, really useful admin tool. Gerhard put a lot of a good effort into this.
Yeah, and he was testing it for quite a long time, and he fixed mostly everything that was found. He's really doing astonishing job with that.
Agreed.
I think we all will agree that APIs are all over the place, and mostly everyone sometimes need to work with them. I have a tool that I prefer for testing them for very long time. It's an application called Postman. But I already mentioned that I like and I enjoy when I don't have to leave one app where I can actually build everything. And because of that, I'm extremely happy that Postman already have the extension for Visual Studio Code. So thanks to that, after installing, I can just go for Postman, sign into my account. I can able directly see my workspaces, so where I have all my prepared API calls, or I can create a new one so I can test everything and not even leaving one workspace. That's awesome.
That's cool.
I think not the last one, but we're getting to the end very quickly. The extension that also can help you a lot. I already had that installed. It's called Git Graph. Git Graph is just more, not just. It's mostly about the UI look, UI image of your Git repository. It helps you to understand what's happening inside your repository. And if you are cooperating on a repository with someone else, you're pretty easily able to see different branches, how they are going next to each other, and find out what changed very quickly. If you've ever worked with Git Kraken, you will be very familiar with this concept. Git Graph directly built here and can very easily help you to find an event. I will try to connect to one of my repositories. I will go for, I will trust that, for source control, and to activate the Git Graph, here's a small icon. Directly after clicking on that, you're able to see how second branches were merged into the main one. You're able to see the author, the commit ID, and if I will click on anything, I'm directly able to see the changed files and even the changes itself. I can even open the file, and I'm able from this part run, I would say, mostly every single Git command that I would need to.
Oh,
Because
that's
on a
awesome.
click, I'm able to go here and refresh what I'm able to see. I'm able to call for fetch if it's required, and commit from a left side or even the stages, everything.
Hmm.
And
I like
because,
the way it also just builds out the UI for being able to see between the sections and everything as well too.
yeah, that's something that I incredibly enjoyed in a Git Kraken, because it has created very, very strong UI over your branches, and it helps very quickly understand what happened. And I was looking for that for quite a long time, to have it directly in a Visual Studio Code, and I'm happy that this extension fulfills everything.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Uh, I have one question on you, Reed.
Sure.
Do you like creating a Vega or Vega Lite?
With Deneb, yeah,
Yes.
there's definitely times where I want to make some custom visuals and build something bespoke for a client. So using the Vega or Vega Lite language, which actually was built by University of Washington or created here in Seattle. So there's definitely times where I have a need for that using the Deneb custom visual that's made by Daniel Marsh Patrick.
Then I have extension just for you,
Oh,
because
perfect. Okay.
here inside the extensions is also oh, the Vega viewer. And this viewer, same as I've showed you, that I was able to directly see the preview of my SVG, this viewer can help you to build the Vega before you will put it into the DNAP directly here with full preview, so you know what you're coding. And it also come up with quite a lot of build parts, so you can even just grab something from their library, change it a bit, and directly drop it into the Power BI. So I hope that you will try this extension just after.
Beautiful. Yeah, this will be really helpful, and I'm actually going to install that right now.
Cool.
Excellent. This has been really useful. I think there's a lot of good things that are both directly and tied to Power BI and kind of adjacent to Power BI between the Vega viewer, which is going to be helpful for individuals building out those custom visuals. We have things that are useful for DAX, for Power Query, for GitHub, and also for tenant management with Gerhard's tools. So I think this is a great way to get started. But I'll also just mention as a takeaway for individuals coming back to this screen here. There we go. So I think just if you are curious if something exists, search for the keywords. There are thousands of custom plugins built by the community available for GitHub or for Visual Studio Code. So it's really easy to go search for some. And this list will continuously be growing. So definitely just keep an eye out for things coming out from the community. But you've seen at least one tool that was in there that was built by a Microsoft MVP, which was Gerhard, and another tool which works well with a custom visual that was built by another MVP. So keep a track of blogs and anything else, and people will continue to probably give recommendations of those. And I'll try to mention a few more on my channel. But Stepan, this was really helpful, and thank you for coming on and sharing some of these. This was a really useful walkthrough.
Thank you for having me. It was a huge pleasure to be able to show you some of extension that I'm using very often.
Perfect. And I will have you back on sometime in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you. See ya, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, or share this video. Plus, if you have any comments for a future video, go ahead and add that to the comment section down below. Now, if this is your first time to my channel, or you want to see more of these awesome videos, please click that subscribe and notification button. Also, feel free to show your support by becoming a channel member.